Hello my dear pupils, good morning, welcome at today's English lesson. Today we are going to have revision for release exams. Okay, so today we are going to deal with present simple and present continuous tense of the verbs. So at first let's talk about present simple. As you can see from the video, present simple is the simplest tense of the verb, is the first tense of verb we learn during the English lessons. So let's have a quick look and just revise the main information about this kind of tense of verb. The simple present tense is one of several forms of present tense in English. It is used to describe habits, unchanging situations, or general truth. The simple present tense is simple to form. Just use the subject plus the base form of the verb. For example, I take the dog out every afternoon. We have subject I, and the verb take, which is in its base form. In the present simple third person singular, he, she, it, we have changes of the verb, as you can revise or as you can remember from the lessons this explained before. We add s, es, or ies to the base form of the verb. To regular verbs, just add an s. For example, travel, travels, give, gives, play, plays. To verbs that end in s, double s, sh, ch, x, and o, we add an es. For example, wash, washes, mix, mixes, go, goes. So, if the last letters of a verb are s or sh, as in the verb wash, we add es, or the verb mix, which ends in a x, we add es, mixes. Then we have other verbs which end in y after a consonant, any letter that isn't a vowel. So we have the last letter an y, but before the y we have a consonant, not a vowel. We change the y in I and adds es. For example, study, studies, fly, flies. How do we form questions and negatives in present simple? Negative forms of present simple. To form the negative, use the auxiliary don't. Be careful, we just add another verb which is in an auxiliary role or in an auxiliary kind. In this case, we use do or don't and does or doesn't in the third person singular. So, we use the auxiliary verb don't for I, you, we, they, and doesn't for he, she, it. Then follow the auxiliary verb with the infinitive form of the verb. So, we have part of the formula, the auxiliary verb don't. Then we have, after don't, we have the infinitive form. For example, I don't live here, you don't live here, she doesn't live here, we don't live here, they don't live here. Be careful, only in the third person singular we have doesn't and not don't. In all the above, live is the infinitive form. So, as you can see, the main verb in these sentences is the verb live, and the auxiliary verb is don't, in this case in a negative form. Then, for questions, to form the questions, we use do or does as the auxiliary. Use do for I, you, we, they, and does for he, she, it. Here is the word order for questions in the present simple. Question word optional, auxiliary, plus subject plus verb. So how do we form the questions in present simple? Here you have some examples. Where do you live? What does he do? What does this computer program do? Why do they argue all the time? Do you like tennis? So as you can see, we may start the question sentence with the auxiliary verb do, or we may also use a question word if we need. There is no question word why, what, where in this question. So the question starts with the auxiliary verb do. The verb that comes after the subject is the infinitive form. So in this case, the main verb is leave, do are the verbs leave, do, argue, and like. Okay, time expressions used with present simple. As I have said you before, time expressions are really important in the types of tenses. So you should give them a very importance because they have an important role in the verb tenses. In this case, we use time expressions for present simple. As you can see in the sentences given as example, the time expressions are those in bold and underlined. For example, she travels to Las Vegas every year or every day, in the morning, at night, on Mondays, once a week, twice a month, 4 times a day, every once in a while, and so on and so forth. So, for what do we use present simple? We use present simple for habits, for daily routines, and for permanent situations. We have also stative verbs. What are stative verbs? Are those verbs who express feelings, thoughts or opinions, senses, possession, measure, cost, and others. Are those verbs which are not used in question tenses. So, said differently, these kind of verbs do not take an ing form. You have some of the verbs, some of the stative verbs here, which we can't use in present continuous. We can't use with an ing form. There are some of them which are accepted. For example, are those who sometimes are called dynamic action verbs and go in a continuous tense, but the meaning of them changes. For example, forgetting or remembering. I will send you examples with sentences, example sentences, and also example exercises to complete in order to revise them correctly and very well. Then we have present continuous. Present continuous tense is used to describe an action that is going on at this moment. So, the action is going on at the moment of speaking. We are using the internet. We are studying English grammar. So, the verb studying and the verb using is happening in the moment of speaking. As you can see, verbs have taken an ing form. To describe an action that is going on during this period of time or a trend, for example, are you still working for the same company? More and more people are becoming vegetarian. We use also to describe an action or event in the future which has already been planned or prepared. We are going on holiday tomorrow. I am meeting my boyfriend tonight. Are you visiting you next week? Are they visiting you next winter? So, events in the future, plannings in the future. We use also present continuous to describe a temporary event or situation. He usually plays the drums, but he is playing bass guitar tonight. A temporary event, something which is happening right now, not in general. Or, for example, in another case, the weather forecast was good, but it's raining at the moment. Was good, but now it's raining. We use also present continuous with always, forever, and constantly, with this kind of phrases, to describe and emphasize a continuing series of repeated actions. For example, Harry and Sally are always arguing. You are constantly complaining about your work. So, in these cases, the phrases and the present continuous is used to describe an action which is annoying us. Okay? How do we form present continuous? How do we form it? The present continuous of any verb is composed of two parts. The present tense of the verb to be plus the present participle of the main verb. So we have verb to be, which is conjugated in am, is, or are. I am, you are, he is, she is, it is. And the present participle of the main verb. What is the present participle? Is the fact that the main verb takes an ing. The form of the present participle is base plus ing. For example, talking, playing, moving, smiling. So the base form of the verb adds an ing. Affirmative, we use subject plus to be plus base plus ing. She is talking. So the subject in this case is she. The verb to be is because in the third person singular, we conjugate the verb to be in the form of is. And we have base plus ing. In this case, the base form of the verb is talk, but it has taken an ing form because we are at present continuous. In negative form, we use subject plus to be plus not plus base plus ing. She isn't or she is not talking. Interrogative, we say is she talking? So we have the verb to be at the beginning of the sentences. Time expressions for the present continuous. What are some of the time expressions used with present continuous? Okay, you have here uses and form, and here you have time expressions. You have also a summary about what we just discussed a little bit before. Then we have time expressions here, as you can see. We use now, at the moment, today, this week, with the present continuous of the verb. Position, when we have position phrase at the end of the sentence. So where it's the position of time expressions, usually it is at the end of the sentence. She's staying with her aunt this week. Okay? Here you have present simple versus present continuous. What are the differences between these two kind of the verb tenses now? Because you will have exercises which are both present simple and present continuous needed to be completed with the verb given as in the gaps or as examples. So you should now define the differences between these two kind of verbs. So you have here present simple, how do we form, when do we use, and time expressions. And here you have present continuous, how do we form it, when do we use it, and the time expressions. If you have an exercise which you are asked to complete the verbs in gaps with an appropriate form in present simple or present continuous, you should give emphasis, or you should give the importance to the time expressions, because time expressions give you the kind of the verb tense needed to be completed. So just be careful and read very carefully the sentences, and just underline the time expressions given in each sentence, because they will help you a lot. You have also another table here which describes you in another way the differences between present continuous and present simple, so you may just have another kind of view of these two kind of sentences, of verb tenses, sorry. So when we talk about present simple, we are talking about something which is happening now, but not at the moment of speaking, around now. Things in general, or things that happened repeatedly. Okay, so, while at the present continuous, the verbs or the actions are happening at the moment of speaking. Okay, you have examples here. You may read them by yourself. Then I will send to you exercises which are related to these two kind of verb tenses, and I want you to complete them correctly and send them to me privately in order to correct them together and to